Hello and welcome to another Crown of Command Battle Report, which is proudly sponsored by Black Arrow Minis. Be sure to check out their web store at www.blackarrowminis.com to find some long lost treasures, such as these Marauder Dwarves and Wood Elves. Today, myself and Nick are playing a 2000 point game of Warhammer Renaissance, which is dedicated to the original creators of the 4th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battles rule sets. And the rules are completely free and available to download from either their Facebook page or a Google Drive download link, which can be found in the video description here. For our scenario today, we have in the center of our 4x4 table a sacred relic that both the Dwarves of Kadak Narn and the Wood Elves of the Lauren Forests have a desire to possess, as the relic contains untold minerals and magical qualities. Let's begin with taking a look at the armies we'll take in today's battle. Starting with the Wood Elves, we have an Elf Warlord on Elven Steed. He has the Helm of the Hunt, Oaken Armour, and the Longbow of Lauren, and is armed with a lance and shield. He's flanked by the Elven Mage of Jade Magic on an Elven Steed with the Enchanted Mirror, and also we have an Elven Commander on Steed with the Moonstone Enchanted Item. Scarlock, the Elven Scout Champion, is armed with the Arcane Bodkin Bow, and we have an Elven Champion with the Black Gem of Nar, and we have 2 Treemen. 6 Lords of Elven Steeds armed with lances, light armor and shields, 7 Lords of Elven Steeds carrying the Assault Banner, 25 Elven Spearmen with the Midwinter Standard, 18 Elven Scouts with the Lynx Banner, and 20 Elven Archers with the Hawkeye Banner, and lastly 6 War Dancers. And leading our Dwarven expedition today, we have Crag the Grim, wielding his runic armor that gives him a strength of 10, +1 attack, and causes d6 wounds. Crag's Gromnel armor gives him a 2+ save with a reroll, and his runic staff makes him immune to fire, and 2 runes of spell breaking. And he's also accompanied with Joseph Bugman. Joseph carries the runic axe, which is inscribed with the Skalth Blackhammer Master Rune that auto wounds, and also he has on it a rune of smiting, so 1 wound causes d6 wounds, and a rune of fire causing flaming attacks. He's armed with a crossbow, shield and heavy armor. His tankard has 3 uses and recovers 1 lost wound from his regiment after a phase. Then we have Joki, the battle standard, carries the master runic standard of sheer stubbornness that makes the whole unit he leads unbreakable. We also have 16 miners with heavy armor, with double-handed weapons, and the Rune of Passage banner allowing them to pass through difficult terrain unhindered. And we also have 19 Bugman Rangers, which are armed with heavy armor, double-handed weapons, and shields. They carry the standard of slowness, which deducts d6 inches from an enemy's charge distance. Also, guarding the Crag the Grim, our general today, we have 18 Hammerers, with the Master Rune of Battle adding d6 to the combat result. They're armed with Gromnel armor and shields and double-handed weapons. We have 16 Longbeards with Gromnel armor, shields, and the Rune of Courage, and with the Rune of Warding and Oath Keeping. And for our War Machines, we have the Bolt Thrower and Flame Cannon. The Bolt Thrower has the Rune of Burning and Penetrating, and the Flame Cannon has the Rune of Disguise and Forging. And before we began, Nick had to draw his cards for the game. So in Warhammer Renaissance, Jade Magicians can draw an extra 3 cards above their level and keep them in hand, which is a new addition to the 2025 rules, as Jade Magic is a little bit weak in comparison to the other college magic spells. Nick also brought along this custom case for his new shiny Wood Elf army that was painted by Eavylead Studios, with an awesome printout of the cover of Scarlock's Wood Elf Archers. I think he bought it from bingbong.com from memory. And that wasn't the only thing that Nick brought along today. He actually brought this hairy green box, so I had to quiz him about it a little bit more to find out exactly what it was all about.
Tell us about your dice box here, mate.
Well, you can buy this kind of material from Daiso or Seria for like 100 yen. I bought some with the intention of maybe making a hill or something with it, but I think that's realistically never going to happen. So it's going to be the
camouflaged dice.
Yeah, so I thought, well, you know,
dice box.
I've often been told by you to take stuff off the table to filming. Well, not just you, anyone, you know, for photographing. So I thought, well, you know, like this will probably be allowed to be left in the corner. You know, because
you do have a portable hill. You do. You bought your own hill.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it can sit there, and then it might be allowed to pass.
Yeah, that's it. Okay.
And the 4 spells that Nick drew for the game were the Jade Casket, the Emerald Pool, Flesh of Stone, and Drain Life. With both forces now having been deployed, it was time to place our scouting units. The Dwarves, having won table sides, got to place first and deployed the Rangers in the Watchtower and with the Scouts in the forest. The last thing to do was to roll off to see who would start the game, and Nick winning the roll on a 6-2, so he got to decide who was going first, and he decided that the Elves would go first, the sneaky git. Something I didn't see coming was the treemen assaulting the Watchtower and giving my Rangers a fright for their bearded lives. And the Sylvan Spearmen took the centre alongside the treemen to secure the sacred stone. And Scarlock's Scout Archers emerged from the dense forest edge. And on both flanks, the Elven Lords marched with speed using their Elven steeds that the Dwarves would find hard to counter. Lastly, the War Dancers on the hill leapt and danced their way down the hill in support. When it came to the shooting phase, Nick chose the Elven Archers on the hill to rain death on the Hammerer unit, with 3 of the loyal King's Guardsmen falling to the deadly arrows. The Wood Elf Scouts that had now emerged from the forest released a volley upon the Longbeards, but their arrows could not find a single mark. The treemen assaulted the Watchtower, bashing and thrashing his oak-twisted branches of arms, and inflicted a single wound on the structure, and also in the process killed 3 of the Rangers inside. After rolling for the Winds of Magic and drawing the cards, Nick chose to keep one of the cards in reserve and threw the rest back into the discard pile, thus ending the very first turn for the Elves. The Bugman Rangers, faced with a treeman at their door, passed their terror test and looked to vacate the tower, and Joseph ordered they formed into ranks and braced the charge of the treekin in the next turn. And Crag ordered his bearded brothers to close the distance to the sacred relic as they came under fire from elven arrows. And the Flame Crew, seizing their chance as there was a lone treeman as a prime target, but their war machine malfunctioned as the die rolled up a misfire, but due to the rune of forging could be fired again next turn. And the bolt throw crew were equally unlucky as their bolt veered wide, missing the hulking tree beast. Well, after that miserable turn, my elven commander poured me a beer in commiserations, and we drank like in the old times when elves were a trusted ally of the dwarves. How times have changed. The winds of magic blew in the air, and I was at the mercy of Nick's Jade Elven Mage. His elf mage cast Flesh of Stone to double his strength and attacks, which I tried to dispel but failed. Crag, seeing that the elven mage would be charging into the miners next turn, decided to use one of his 2 spell-breaking runes, which ended the incantation to bring the first turn to a close. Seeing the dwarves outnumbered, the elves seize a chance to encircle them with their elven cavalry, sweeping in on their flanks. The Longbeards passed their terror check for the treemen to charge, and the Elven Lords and their commander and the Jade Mage charged into Joseph and his Bugman Rangers. Before the hand-to-hand combat could begin, the Elven archers, famed for their bow superiority, let loose a devastating barrage on the helpless dwarf hammerers, which saw a high number of casualties, but the unit of Kingsguard were determined to make the elves pay for their cowardly tactics and held their ground. The Elven commander of the Elven Lords, armed wearing the Helm of the Hunt, bestowed to him a +1 weapon skill, attack and strength, which tore into the Rangers. Poor old Joseph Bugman saw many of his dear Rangers slaughtered, and even his magic tankard could not save their lives this day. Joseph did, however, reply in taking 2 of the Elven Lords down and with superior strength, thanks to his runic axe. Flanking the hammerers, the Longbeards braced the charge of the second treeman. The treeman's charge saw 3 of the old greybeards fall to this ancient beast of the forest, which the dwarves failed to land a single wound on it. The Rangers, having lost their heart to fight on, lost their nerve, and seeing all their dead brethren around them, broke and ran. The Elven cavalry managed to overrun them and trample their bodies into the earth. Let us toast to their sacrifice with a beer or 2. With magic brewing, Nick tried to cast Flesh of Stone on his mounted Jade Magician, which Crag allowed to pass this time, as he wanted to reserve his last remaining rune of spellbreaking for something more nasty in the future. Crag, with his remaining Kingsguard, made a last chance charge into the spears of the Elven unit that stood fast to brace their rage. And the Dwarf miners entered the flank of the table to cut off the charge of the second unit of Elven Lords. The Dwarf flame cannon, now repaired and refueled, spewed its flaming ammunition upon the 2 Elven Lords, resulting in the death of 2 of these proud Elven warriors. And the Bolt Thrower crew aligned their war machine with the treemen in their sights, released their flaming bolt, which struck their target this time, resulting in the treemen bursting into flame. The Elven commander steadied the nerves of his men and horses as they saw the treemen burn and fall. Longbeards managed to cause a single wound to the other treeman, but it was saved by its natural bark hide, and the single wound inflicted to the Longbeards was saved by their Grummel armour. In the melee alongside the Longbeards, The Elven Spearman champion challenged the Hammerers, and Crag accepted without knowing the pointy-head Git had the Black Gem Anar, keeping them both trapped in time for a single turn. The remaining spearmen then thrust their spears, stabbing away, and claimed the lives of 3 more of the King's Guard. As for the Dwarves, Joki and his comrades failed to inflict any wounds in return, but luckily the Master Rune of Battle and the Rune of Sheer Stubbornness held them in combat for another turn. Magic filled the air again, and Crag managed to successfully dispel the Flesh of Stone. The Elven Mage cast the Emerald Pool spell to transport himself anywhere in the table within 24 inches. Crag, not wishing to use his remaining Rune of Spellbreaking, allowed the spell to go off, and the Jade Mage appeared beside the Dwarf War Machines on the hillside. Then Nick attempted to cast the Jade Casket to bring back one of his dead models back to life. Knowing this would be the Treeman, I had tried to destroy it by using the Destroy spell card, but only managed to dispel it in the end. Nick began the third turn by declaring a charge against the Dwarf Miners with his mounted Elven Lords. His commander began to come around the rear of the Dwarven battle lines, and his war dancers and archers descended the hill to join the fray. The Elven Lord's charge was powerful enough to down a few of the front-ranking miners. But their return attack with their double-handed picks saw almost the entire regiment perish. I'm sure Nick now thought that this charge may have been a bad idea. The Longbeards, having failed to wound the tree beast, sustained another casualty to the treemen, but managed to hold their ground for the turn. With Crag now free of the Black Gem's magical hold, he unleashed all his might and smited his foes that stood in his way, including the Elven champion that had imprisoned him. The Spearman Elves had managed to slay the unit musician, but that was made up for with Joki, the army's battle standard, who also claimed 2 more kills in the melee. The Elves managed to hold on miraculously this turn, much to the dismay of Crag and his Dwarven Hammerers. The miners managed to rout the Elven Lords and tested to hold their ground to not pursue them off the table. To conclude the turn, the winds of magic blew across the battlescape. Nick tried to cast Flesh of Stone, which was halted by Crag's successful dispel. Ending the turn, I decided to host this Elven commander to some Dwarven beer and customary cuisine at a local beer hall. The best way to settle old grudges is to indulge with beer and cheer. And now that I had plied Nick with some booze, it was time to head back to the table for Dwarf turn 3 to try and seize the Sacred Stone. The miners pivoted to march towards the centre of the table. Flame cannon fired, but resulted in catastrophe as the war machine exploded in flame, killing all of the crew. The bolt thrower, however, had more luck in killing at least one of the Elven lords on steed, and the commander held the remaining lords and quelled their nerves. The Longbeards this time managed to find a weak spot in the treeman's bark hide, but alas, Nick saved once again. The treeman's response was to fell another 2 brave Longbeards, but the unit held their nerve for another turn. Crag now faced the Elven spearmen with grim determination, as the dwarves, protected by their forged grommel armour, saved them from the Elven mithril spears. The culmination of grommel armour, the rune of battle, and some poor dice luck for Nick saw the deep-ranked unit of Sylvan Elves break and flee. Crag decided to pursue, managed to overrun them, and halt before a line of Elven archers. The winds of magic flowed across the battlefield, and Nick was fortunate to have the Total Power card, and no Dispel runes to stop it. The felled treeman was brought back to life thanks to the incantation of the Jade Casket. The treeman charged the bolt thrower crew, and the Elven commander lapped around the rear of the Dwarven battle lines. Elven scouts released a salvo of arrows that managed to penetrate and kill 4 of the Dwarven miners. And the bolt thrower crew never stood a chance against this animated, magical summoned treeman and lost their lives in the combat. And the Longbeards praised Grungy as no dwarves died to the bark-armoured limbs of the treeman this turn. In the magic phase, Crag tried dispelling the Jade Casket, but failed, leaving the animated tree beast in place for the final turn. The miners charged into the Elven scouts. Sadly, 4 more aged, old, grey-haired Longbeards fell to the bark claws of the treeman. And to Crag's surprise, and mine too, the dwarf miners caused no wounds to the Elven scouts with their double-handed picks, but a single dwarf miner did fall to the blades in the result of their combat. Crag the Grim, now on the warpath with his dwarven retainers, smashed the Elven archers' lines and sent them into rout, which they pursued and claimed the crest of the hill to survey the devastation of his dwarven expedition. But Crag had to concede that this battle was lost, and handed victory this day to the Elven commander, which he would write Nick's name in the Book of Grudges as an eternal grudge to his people, lest they forget. And thank you so much for watching this Crown of Command Battle Report. If you enjoyed this and would like to see more content, then head over to the Crown of Command Patreon page. Here you can access the uncut version with all the banter and swearing you are used to from the older battle reports. And a massive thanks to my incredible wall of support from amazing patrons that help support me make these videos for your enjoyment. And for a quick teaser, Nick and I did get to film the next day a 2nd edition battle report featuring Nick's Eldar for the very first time and a piece of gorgeous 3D printed terrain by Dr. Spork at 3D Cults. Check the video description for the link. Nick is facing a Chaos Nurgle army I recently completed on behalf of Eavylead Studios, so look forward to that in the coming weeks. Until then, you can always check out our Splatter Natters, the podcast, and Patreon video content for more.